She was insane, I was sure of it. The chaos and violence had pushed her over the edge, but I couldn't argue with her twisted logic, and it wasn't like I had any better ideas. If I only had a little time left, I might as well use it to bring some justice to those who deserved it. So, I nodded and agreed to follow Tanya a little further down a path that would likely lead to my death. We made it across the island, but the journey was anything but peaceful. Tanya kept us off the roads to avoid attention. We trudged for 2 or 3 miles along a muddy path, constantly watching the sky. It didn't take long for the winged demons to find us. I spotted the first red dot descending from the dark clouds, followed by more, at least 2 dozen. I shouted a warning, and we both dropped to one knee, aiming our weapons upward. The harpies came closer, their black eyes and fang-filled mouths now clearly visible. I felt a chill of terror, but also anger, knowing we were about to die. We were out in the open, with nowhere to hide. Even with our guns, we couldn't take them all. I glanced at Tanya and saw a flicker of fear beneath her tough exterior. But she wasn't giving up, and I was ready to fight by her side to the end. We aimed our guns, waiting for the harpies to come closer, but they stopped about 50 feet above us. They circled, cackling and wailing, but didn't attack. I wondered why, and the answer scared me. I figured something even more powerful was holding them back, something that had other plans for us. I didn't say anything to Tanya, but I could see she was uneasy for the first time since we'd met. "What do we do?" she shouted over the noise. "We keep going," I shouted back. My confidence seemed to help. Tanya nodded, and we moved forward. The harpies followed us the rest of the way, their screams adding to the tension as we prepared for battle. Tanya was right about Kane's group. They were holed up in the island's only working tavern, a rundown bar with peeling paint and a faded sign. We heard them before we saw them, their loud, drunken cheers echoing out. We crept up to the window and peeked inside. The group was having a wild party, clearly drunk. There were 4 of them, 2 men and 2 women. They looked rough, with messy hair, bloodshot eyes, and blood-stained clothes. They laughed like hyenas, their behavior more animal than human. Their weapons, pistols, and machetes were close by, but they weren't expecting an attack. They passed a whiskey bottle around, drinking heavily and laughing wickedly. But what were they so happy about? I soon found out, and it made me sick. On the filthy bar were the 3 severed heads of the lighthouse victims' trophies, brought back by these sadistic killers. It didn't take long to spot Kane among the group. I recognized him from his mugshot, his dark skin and intense, predatory eyes as he led the twisted celebration. I glanced at Tanya and saw she was just as disgusted and furious as I was. "Let's do this," whispered. We stepped back from the window, readied our guns, and kicked in the door, storming the bar to confront the monsters inside. We burst in aggressively, catching them off guard as we aimed our weapons at them. But then everything slowed down as we faced a tense standoff. Tanya and I hesitated. We'd come to kill these devil-worshipping cultists, but we were still cops at heart. Killing in cold blood didn't sit right with us. The standoff didn't last long. One of the male cultists suddenly drew his pistol, but Tanya was faster. She blasted him with her shotgun before he could fire. I was stunned for a second by the bloody scene, but a bullet whizzing past my head snapped me back to reality. I turned and saw one of the women firing wildly at me. My training kicked in, and I shot her 3 times in the chest, taking her down. A second later, I heard a scream. The other woman was charging at me with a machete. I started to turn, but Tanya took her out with a shotgun blast. We'd taken out the followers, but Kane was still alive. Before we could react, he opened fire, spraying bullets at us. I ducked for cover and returned fire, but Kane was already running. I shot at him as he fled, but all my bullets missed as he disappeared into a back room. I turned to check on Tanya and made a horrifying discovery. One of Kane's bullets had hit her square in the forehead, killing her instantly. I looked at her lifeless eyes, remembering her bravery and how she'd pushed me to keep going even when I wanted to give up. I knew I had to finish this for her. Kane had to die, and it was up to me to do it. I closed Tanya's eyes, picked up her shotgun, and loaded a fresh shell. I ran past the bodies and severed heads, chasing Kane into the kitchen. I pushed through the swing doors, scanning the messy room for him. But Kane ambushed me, tackling me with incredible strength. I fired the shotgun, but the shot went wide, and the force of his attack knocked the gun from my hands. He pinned me to the ground, trying to stab me with a butcher's knife. Kane didn't say a word, but the look in his eyes said it all. He was going to kill me. With all my strength, I kicked him off me. He stumbled back, furious, and raised his knife for another attack. I was still on the ground, winded, and he thought I was helpless. But he didn't know about the .38 revolver in my ankle holster. I grabbed the gun and aimed it at his chest. For the first time, I saw fear in Kane's eyes. He dropped the knife and raised his hands, begging, "Please, don't shoot." But it was too late for that. I didn't fall for his tricks. I pulled the trigger. Bang! I kept firing until all 6 bullets were gone. Kane was hit 6 times at close range. He fell back against the wall, his eyes wide with shock and pain. He tried to speak, but blood poured from his mouth. Then he stopped moving, his life finally over and hopefully his soul sent to hell. I got up and looked at what they'd done. Kane was dead. I'd completed my mission. But what now? I walked back outside to face my doom. The storm still raged in the distance, but the parking lot was filled with bloodthirsty harpies. 6 of them were perched nearby, 3 more on the tavern roof, and others circled above, waiting to attack. I was out of ammo and had nowhere to run. I looked into the hungry eyes of the winged demons, ready for the end. But then, something unexpected happened. Suddenly, out of nowhere, a deafening sound filled the air, the blaring of trumpets, loud and powerful, coming from all directions. I covered my ears, trying to block the noise, but it had an even greater effect on the harpies. The demons couldn't stand it. The sound seemed to cause them physical pain. I watched in stunned amazement as the monsters panicked, blood pouring from their ears as they screeched and flapped their wings, fleeing back into the storm above. I didn't get a chance to catch my breath though. A bright beam of white light broke through the dark clouds and shot down toward me. In an instant, my entire body froze, trapped in the light. My feet lifted off the ground as I was pulled upward. I had no control, but strangely, I felt no fear. Instead, a strange calm washed over me as I drifted into a peaceful sleep. When I woke up, I was in a very strange place. I was sitting in a comfortable leather chair in a small, windowless office. In front of me was a solid oak desk covered in messy piles of papers. Behind the desk sat an old man, gray-haired, slightly overweight, and wearing a rumpled, dark suit. He looked stressed, his eyes red as he muttered to himself and scribbled notes with an ink quill. The more I watched him, the more I realized he wasn't human, but he looked like an overworked, stressed-out office worker. It took him a moment to notice me. I cleared my throat to get his attention, and he looked up with a friendly smile. "Oh, hello there," he said in a crisp accent, using my full name. "Thank you for coming. I'm sorry about the unusual way you were brought here." I was too stunned to respond. "Where am I?" I finally managed to ask. "This is my office," he replied with a gentle laugh. "Sorry for the mess. It's been a very busy day, as you can imagine." I didn't understand. "Who are you?" I asked impatiently. "Forgive me," he said, raising a hand. "You deserve an explanation. I'm an administrator of sorts, tasked by the Almighty with coordinating this unfortunate business." Suddenly, it clicked. "You mean the rapture? The end of the world?" "Oh no," he said with a dry chuckle. "This isn't the end. That's not scheduled for quite some time. Today was just a practice run." "A practice run?" I repeated, stunned. "Yes," he confirmed. "We do these drills every century or so. It's to train our forces and gather data for the real event. Standard procedure, really." I was shocked by how casually he talked about the horrors I'd just witnessed. Had they really killed hundreds of people for a training exercise? And why would an all-powerful God need to practice? My head was spinning. I was angry, exhausted, and confused. There were so many questions, but I could only think of one. "How did the exercise go?" I asked. The administrator grimaced and looked away. "Not well, I'm afraid. Joseph Kane caused a lot of problems. It's rare to find someone so evil in such a small community, let alone one working with the devil. And then there's you and your team. You weren't supposed to be there. I'm sorry you got caught up in this. I leaned forward, hanging on his every word. The issue now is you, he continued. Your companions are gone, their lives are over, and they've moved on. But you survived, and it's unfair to keep you here when you still have a life to live. So, my superiors have decided to send you back. I was furious. I stood up and pointed at him. Wait a minute. You can't just do this. I want answers. But the administrator was already focused on his paperwork. Yes, well, I'd love to help, but we're out of time. I lunged at him, but he just snapped his fingers. A white light engulfed me, and I felt myself falling as everything went dark. When I woke up, I was back on the island, lying on a sandy beach. The storm was gone, replaced by blue skies and calm seas. There were no demons in sight. At the end of the beach, I saw a jetty with a small rowboat tied to it. My way out. I didn't hesitate. I left the island and never looked back. There's no official record of the raid, the deaths on the island, or even the existence of Tartarus. Any history you read will say the island was abandoned decades ago, and locals avoid it because of rumors of ghosts and demons. As for me, when I returned to the agency, there was no record of the Kane investigation. The murders he committed are still unsolved. Rodriguez and the rest of my team are dead, but the official reports say they died in separate accidents, training mishaps, car crashes, shootings. It's all been covered up. I don't know if the government is responsible or if the celestial powers changed our timeline. Some people think I'm crazy, but there are others who remember Tartarus and the storm that hit the island that summer morning. I've found these people online, and their stories match mine. It's like a Mandela effect, a shared memory of something that supposedly never happened. I also remember what the administrator said about these exercises happening every century. It makes me wonder if this explains other mysteries, like the Roanoke colony, the Marie Celeste, and the Flannan Isles lighthouse. I doubt I'll ever know the full truth, at least not in this life. But one thing is clear to me now. Heaven and hell are real, and one day, their forces will come to end our world. I plan to live the rest of my life with that in mind, and I suggest you do the same.